How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Good.
How was your day?
It's been a mad couple days over here. How about on your end?
Me too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
This is a dense month, if there ever was one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, sorry I'm running a few minutes late.
No problem. I totally understand.
Okay. All right.
So what is a typical day like for you?
A typical day. Oh God, I don't even know. It's been so crazy. To be totally honest, if you were to spy on my world, there'd probably be a lot of me seeming very zoned out, not really doing anything. That seems to be a lot of how I function.
Yeah. Well, some people like to fill up every moment with duties, and some people, I'm more like what you are. I'm off floating. But it feels like I'm busy. It feels like I'm focused. It's just unfocused.
To be honest, I don't even know how people live normal lives at all. Like do a 9-to-5 job and all that. It seems like time goes. Time seems to go twice as fast for me, but I seem to do everything twice as slow.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
That's awesome.
Well, thanks for speaking with me. I appreciate you setting up this interview.
Yeah, good. Thank you for agreeing to do it. I've been watching your videos for a while now. I started watching Kaipacha, and somehow I got someone steered me over to yours. So now I watch Kaipacha and yours every week. Well, you're not so weekly, right? You're not so you're not so organized. Or not organized. What's the word? You're not.
No, I'm not that organized. I don't know how the hell he does it every week.
Yeah.
I mean. Kaipacha taught me astrology, so I've been inspired from him, and I was doing it weekly for the first 2 years.
Yeah.
And he does like a dozen clients a day on top of that. And travels around the world doing these retreats. I have no clue how he does it.
Yeah, it's the bundle of energy for sure, eh?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, huge inspiration.
Yeah.
I saw you interviewed him too. That's awesome.
Oh, good. Yeah. Okay, well, I have my questions are sort of the same for everybody, and then we kind of veer off into how everybody answers them. But that's kind of like my format, is just to sort of to see how everybody's different perspectives are in the same sort of structure. So how I enter into my conversation is to ask you how you would describe the state of the world today.
Are we started?
Yes, we can start. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the question is, how's the state of the world today?
Yeah, how would you describe it? How would you describe it? Yeah.
That's a very good question. And I might even be kind of tricky and sort of reflect or rephrase it back. How are we doing today in our inner world, in our personal experience, Because we, as individuals, we reflect the world. We are created out of the earth, and we share a similar life. And so, how are we doing in terms of our connection to ourselves? And do we feel peace? Do we feel harmony? That's another good question. And so to make it personal, in terms of my own connection to peace and harmony, there's an ideal that I think that we're not quite there. I think that we all sort of carry this fundamental ideal. I think that in our hearts we all want peace and harmony and a nice relationship with nature. And obviously, at some point in our history, we got off track of that. And we might have even gotten so off track of it that we have forgotten what real peace and real harmony even is. Personally, again, rolling it back to myself, when I get a real taste of peace or harmony for any real period of time, it's almost shocking. It's like, whoa. And then there's these parts in me that almost try to run away from it, like, whoa, this is too good to be true.
Right.
it's too good to be true that we could be peaceful and harmony and not have to feel guilty or bad about it. And so it's a personal thing too, where I'm trying to integrate that connection to nature, peace and harmony, and it's a process, and there's tools and things that we can find out of our own struggle, I think.
Right.
And I think in many respects that's where we find ourselves in the world today as well.
So then
go ahead.
What is the role of conflict then? 'Cause that first question inevitably leads to conflict, because that's where we all are as a species, individually and as a species, it seems. So what is the role of conflict, do you think, in consciousness and in the role of contrasting what peace and harmony can be, I suppose?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's, totally. And I think you almost answered it there. Contrast. It's how are we going to learn what we are if not through contrast? How are we going to know how tasty and enjoyable and lovely peace and harmony is if we didn't have a contrast that sort of initiates that goal and that appreciation of what peace and harmony is? And so there's this sort of dual nature of the good and bad of the current circumstance that we find ourselves in. It's bad because it's painful. Having a disconnect from nature and so much lack of harmony, which leads to the wars, the judging, the misogyny, the racism, so many of these things we see in our world. And yet, if we did not ever experience these things, there would be no journey of being the people who have the capability to help others. There'd be no opportunity to enjoy the fruits of our own labor in that endeavor. And so there's sort of this hero's quest, or this initiation into being the souls who have the opportunity to help other people. And that's, it's even sort of a step above wanting peace and harmony for ourselves, is, we have the opportunity to offer those things to others, is something that we would never have the opportunity to experience if there wasn't the contrast that we see in today's day and age. And so there is a hidden blessing, I think, in the full spectrum contrast that is huge on this earth. There is heaven on this planet. There is certainly hell on this planet as well. And in that, there is an opportunity. And that opportunity is to have our hearts awoken. By seeing and experiencing that contrast, it sort of rips us open. We can't suffer at the hands of somebody else and then watch somebody else suffer. It initiates our hearts and it initiates our compassion to be those hands of service to others. And if we were in some heaven plane where it was all, ice cream and, candy canes and being fanned by angels all the time, we would do nothing. And if we were in hell and it was all pain and suffering and, whatever image hell conjures up for you, we wouldn't be able to do anything because we're in so much pain. And so again, the sort of hidden opportunity in having the full spectrum, heaven and hell, on this planet is that contrast awakens our hearts to being participants in the world. Oh, okay, we don't just sit around. We can spread love and compassion. And I think that actually is a higher flavor and even a higher level of enjoyment than simply living in some sort of naive paradise, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. It's like, is bliss the goal, or are we supposed to transcend the concept of bliss and conflict? But I want to go sideways for a second here. How would you break down the aspects that make up a human being? Do you know what I mean by that question?
What is a human being?
Yeah, what is it that makes? What are the aspects that make up a human being, from your point of view?
That's a good question, because human beings are wild. Our nature is pretty far out. I think that more far out, quote unquote, than we've been limited to believe or been conditioned to believe. So what are humans is we're obviously multidimensional. We have a physical body. We have emotions. we have a mind, and they are certainly not on the same dimension, which is why you can't open somebody's brain with a scalpel and find their mind or find their consciousness. We can find how they sort of connect and where they meet up, but we are certainly multidimensional, multifaceted beings. So we have a soul. We have what many people call an ego. I personally refer to the ego as the inner child, because the ego's understanding of the multidimensional nature of ourselves is limited. We don't remember before our birth, for example, whereas, the accepted idea, particularly with astrologers, is that we've had many, many, many lives. And there is an underlying story that is being revealed through our life that ultimately brings all of these different facets together. Why do I think the way I think? Why do I feel the way I feel? All connects in this deeper underlying story of who we are, what we're doing in this life. And I think that comes from our soul's desires in terms of what do we want to learn, what do we want to grow into. And so what the human being is, I think, is a human being is at any point in that pathway of transition between something that is not aware of itself and something that is so inconceivable, it's impossible to describe, and yet is self-aware. And we're all kind of on that journey of coming into this inconceivable nature of the soul. And the soul is so inconceivable, it's so badass. It takes many, many lifetimes of this unveiling, and I think all of that is really what bliss is, which is this taste of life, the flavor of life, and everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, becomes a part of that unveiling of our soul's nature. And so I think that that is the potential of humanity, is to come into self-awareness of, oh, okay, this is why all of this is happening, so I can taste and know and share myself with others in a way that is making that flavor and taste even more and more tasty. I don't know if there's ever a point where we finish this journey, or, oh, this is who I am in totality, and this is who God is in totality. It sort of seems to be a bottomless pit. And maybe that there's a level of awareness where we kind of just go like, okay, I see where this is going. It's never going to stop. So I think that can be sort of the potential of man that also might lead into your question about what bliss is as well. Right.
And also leads into what God is. What's your perspective? Obviously, you would suggest that there is a grand design. This astrology suggests there obviously is a grand design. I would imagine that you would suggest there's a grand designer. And if so, what would you say is our relationship to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is certainly a part of this unveiling. Is, okay, I'm a human being. Okay, the ingredients that make up my body are the same ingredients that make up everything else on this planet. So there's clearly a connection. Einstein proved that time is relative, that it's sort of illusory, so we can rewind time and take our families, generations back, even to, a hypothetical one person coming out of Africa. And so, we can, from many different approaches, start to see our interconnectivity with all things. And I think that is the closest we can conceive of what God may be, is, being the proprietor of everything. Yeah, there is some kind of order to everything. There is, it's like, yeah, with time, there's seasons, there's summer, there's fall, everything kind of reflects this dance. And that's how I personally see this order. When we hear the word order, it can come into that sort of, dividing and labeling and, this is more prehistoric, this is more recent. And to me, I feel that the order that the planets and our connection to them us sort of being reflections of this greater story, or these archetypes that are, fundamental building blocks of all reality. It's this dance, it's this music, it's this symphony, the actual movement from summer to fall to winter to spring is not merely a mechanical, predictable machine. There is rhythms and cycles that are expressing and portraying beauty. There is an expression of beauty that's coming out of this earth. Even if we have come so far and forgotten the inherent function of being on this earth as being part and parcel of this beauty, of this love. And so that's what God is. We are part and parcel of this capital B beauty, of this capital L love. And it's everywhere, and it's everything, and it's life. And if anything, I think that's what astrology has really tangibly shown, is that it's all life. Everything is life. Nothing is separate from life. Even death is just, another movement, another rhythm, another cycle. And this is what God is. God is life. God is love. And I don't know if you can do dividing or much conceptualizing beyond that. I would say, if anything, this is my own personal philosophy, is that our relationship to God reflects who we are as unique and individual souls. And there is a beauty in that, lover and beloved. Who is the beloved to you would be the question that I feel is one and the same with who God is to you. Capital B, beloved. How does that appear to you? What does that feel like to you? What kind of images are conjured? Is our relationship to God? And, in terms of connecting to God, I think that it's important to sort of roll back to that ultimate simplicity of what opens your heart. What is beauty to you? What is love to you? May be a different expression of somebody else's expression, but all of our expressions is this telling of the beauty and the love of God. And I don't know if there is a right or wrong description or name or flavor. I think that in itself, the diversity of it, is the portrayal of this, which is, beyond, it keeps growing. More people keep incarnating. Everything keeps changing. And so this beauty keeps retelling itself in deeper and deeper ways as we evolve. Our relationship to God gets deeper and deeper. And so our relationship to God, what God means to us, our conceptions, images, also changes as we evolve.
You mentioned how it's the diversity and it's all of our descriptions together. It seems that it's becoming a more conscious perspective that the individuals within a whole are becoming the focus. I know with you and Kepacha, the dream team. I mean, it seems like people are coming together to join forces as diverse individuals within a whole. Is that something for you that 2012 was a pivotal change for the new era towards that angle on things?
2012 as a specific date, I'm not totally sure, but in general, I think that we can say that this time in which we find ourselves is on the fulcrum point between two very different dimensions. And so, the terms that astrologers use is that we're shifting ages, we're leaving the age of Pisces, we're coming into the age of Aquarius. But what is sort of unarguable is we are coming to a point in human history where we have to change our direction on a fundamental level. And much of that is fundamentally coming from our beliefs, our understanding of God, one another. It's one another. How do we see human beings is evolving and changing than how it was seen in the past. And it's coming to a boiling point where we have to change our relationship to one another, our relationship to the earth, to God, however we want to conceptually frame it. If we don't change our relationship, well, we're on the brink of extinction. And so evolution says you are going to learn. You know, you're going to learn, you're going to grow from your experiences, whether it be happy, sad, good, ugly, whatever. All of these experiences ultimately gives us the opportunity to learn and grow. So every experience is a gift, even if it is a torturous one, because we are learning and growing from these experiences. And so, yeah, there is a huge shift that I sense going on, and it is in relation of us truly comprehending and respecting one another for what does it mean to be a human being? What does it mean to be a human? What does it mean to be man or woman? And this gets reflected in what does it mean to be, you know, of a black race or a white race or a Muslim creed or a Hindu creed. This all is coming back to the question, what does it really mean to be human? And obviously, this whole era of the past did a lot of division, saying, oh, well, they're different, you know. Yeah, women are human, but their brains are smaller than men. You know, this is a very accepted concept from not that long ago. And, oh, yeah, those are slaves. So, you know, they're human being, but, you know, it's kind of, you know, on the fringes. I mean, that is literally the level of human consciousness that we're coming from. I recently saw this movie. It was called The Hidden Figures. It was about black women working for NASA. And there's this, you know, and these genius women, you know, before computers, they were human computers. They were calculations. And this was a time during racism. All the black women were confined in this back room doing like the lowly servant work, and we're freaking launching rockets into space. It's like, what? This is such a reflection of our humanity, is we're smart enough to send rockets into space, but we're not evolved enough to respect another race as being the same as who we are, even though there's a different skin color. Right. You know, that tells us something about our humanity, where we are in time. And I think that it goes back to evolution. What is the standard of evolution? What is it? What is a highly evolved soul, or someone who is helping invite us or move us collectively in the future look like, compared to somebody who is, you know, holding us back? And we're seeing that conflict and that friction going on right now because this transition is being invited. And there's not even a guarantee, I think, that it is necessarily going to happen. It requires us and our will and direction to make that happen.
Right. Well, is it just a matter of that humanity turned to looking outward rather than inward? I mean, as you mentioned, we send rockets out into space, but you can travel space by going inward. Is that the case where man really left their inner self and projected themselves onto the world and lost that sense of connection to everything? I mean, you know.
Yes. Yeah, you just hit the nail on the head with one of those fundamental things that we've lost. Is it's been so outward directed. It's been about what are you doing? What are you achieving? How big is the sculpture going to be left behind when you leave this planet that is a mark of what you did and what you achieved on the outside? This is the standard of success. And so what I would invite us as a collective to ask is, how well does this standard of success truly reflect the potential of human evolution? Because is that what means you are successful, that you've built the greatest empire, you know? This is like Alexander the Great. We're coming from this thousands and thousands and thousands of years of success being determined about how well you're going to survive, how many resources you have, so on and so forth. And what have we sacrificed and lost in that endeavor is what prevents us from going inside. You know, we can take this into contemporary world situations. You know, take someone who wants to meditate and process their feelings, and you know, we were talking at the beginning how we can go off into other worlds, and then people say that's lazy, or you're crazy, or you're delusional,
unproductive.
You're feeling too much, and so you're not getting enough done. And this is where our standard is as a world. And so we've lost that connection inside of ourselves. And because of that, we've lost our capability to create that type of emotional safe space versus physical safe space. Oh, we have enough food to survive the winter is physical safe space. But do you feel safe hanging out with the people that you're working with in order to make enough money to survive the winter is the next question. And I think the majority of people who are breaking their backs to make sure they have enough money to survive winter would probably say, no, I hate my boss, I hate my coworkers, it's all grist in the mill, it's a dog-eat-dog world, fight to survive. That's the world that we've created. But that in no way has to reflect what it means to be human. And in no way is that perhaps our original nature. That's what we've constructed it into being. And so, yeah, we've built up a lot of walls from going inside of ourselves. And certainly that is disconnecting us from a whole other dimension of truth and wisdom. And, you know, if we could create emotional safe space for each other and trust one another and not believe that it's a dog-eat-dog world and that we have to fight enemies and so on and so forth, how much more could we build and create outwardly would probably completely change. And so I think that we've really created some major blockages to our own collective evolution by being so outwardly focused. Absolutely.
So do you think it is, well, like we were saying, it seems like conflict is an innate part of our experience here. Do you think it's a critical mass that's going to have to change the direction of humanity, or is it something that's going to happen naturally, or can you see it just going down towards self-destruction, and that maybe we're supposed to, the ones who are aware, they have to transcend this realm? How do you play out the future, or do you play out the future in your mind?
Well, to be totally honest, I do not predict the future, because the future is a very odd combination of, there are things that are outside of our hands that are determined, and we still have free will. You know, we can't be waiting for somebody else to do the work for us. You know, that's setting us up to go down into that disaster zone. Yeah, for sure. So your question is, I'm sorry, can you rephrase it again?
It wasn't really a question. I was just curious to see how you see the possibilities for this species in this.
Well, we're at a breaking point right now, so we're gonna figure out the answers to that question, I think, pretty soon. You know, are we gonna go down, or are we gonna fix this? And honestly, the way it typically works through evolution is that it's not everybody's gonna change all of a sudden. We're not all of a sudden going to be just like, oh, holy smokes, we need to recycle, and we need to not use plastic bags anymore. We're not all going to be just like, oh, okay, it turns out that Mr. Scientist was right. The majority of people are mostly just going to be programmed by whatever's on the television. And in reality, I think that's one of the greatest powers in terms of how can we evolve quickly. It's going to have to do with media. Who's sending out the messages that will change, who are creating the technology that will take us into the future, who's finding the solutions, who's working through this stuff and actually carving out the pathways of our future evolution are quite, a small group of people. And that sort of opens up this flow. And then everything just kind of flows out. That's how I see this movement happening. The true pioneers, the true leaders, essentially, they don't get seen or recognized in their life usually. They get seen or recognized after their life, and then people catch up to them. And oh, okay, Nikola Tesla was way ahead of his time, and so on and so forth. And so again, it's those souls, and those souls have to be so, able to trust their own wisdom and their own connection and divinity that they're going against the grain in order to pull the whole collective into the future of evolution. That's how I see this is really going.
Well, you mentioned free will earlier, and obviously as an astrologer, you see that there is a structure with which we seem to be bound by to some degree, and it's somewhat predictable. So where's the free will as you see it within that structure?
That's a great question. Because it gets really blurry, I think, yeah? I mean, it gets really blurry. The way I like to phrase it to my clients is we have both free will and determinism. We don't have total free will. We can't just grow wings and fly around like a little bird. We can't just grow gills and suddenly breathe underwater like a fish. And so we are limited to the nature that we are. We're limited to the nature that we're born into. And with the gifts that we're given, with the limitations that we're given, there's so much capability for us to find creative solutions, for us to turn lead into gold, lemons into lemonade, etc. And so, oftentimes we see souls coming into extremely harsh or limited, brittle type situations and using their genius, turning that lead into gold. And so we can't simply, believe our way into a new reality, or if I just say the same thing or I envision the same thing. There has to be a level of us integrating the ideals into form, making it real, and that involves that type of creative struggle. I think it's a creative struggle between our free will and what is determined. Like, hey, I got karma. Karma we don't choose. Karma we create through our actions, and then it follows us. And then you get born somewhere that's going to reflect your karma from your past lives back to you, and you don't have a choice about that. And so this absolute free will thing is not really true, because you can't become a tyrant and destroy thousands of villages and tribes and then not learn your lesson. Everything in life is, again, it's about learning and it's about growth. And karma isn't an evil, bad enemy that we're trying to destroy and eliminate. Karma is just cause and effect that says, if you do something, it's going to generate a reaction, and that reaction is going to move in a different direction, and then you have more choices and more actions to make. And I find that, in terms of working with karma and spiritualizing, it is oftentimes that reverberation. I go so much in that direction, karma, the forces of nature, limitations, pushes me back. Oh, okay, I guess I can't be going there. And we sort of find this balance in ourselves that we can use the forces of nature, the things that are outside of our control, to be the sort of boundaries that we use to encapsulate our own genius and creativity. That way we can bring it into form. It's a three-dimensional world. We're confined by time and form and limitation. This is all Saturn, karma, in astrology. And Saturn gets a horrible reputation, mainstream in astrology. Saturn transits aren't really fun because you're dealing with time, limitation. You have to do this. Here is your karma. I like to correlate Saturn in astrology to the mean high school teacher that flunks us the whole year and forces us to spend hour after hour studying, putting in that hard work. And then the final day when we leave that exam room, it's just like, I finally did it. He gives us that funny little wink with a glimmer in his eye. He's like, don't you know I did all this for you? I wanted you to see how strong you were, you to see how capable you are. And so similarly, we're these infinite spiritual beings in these limited human forms, and it's like, oh, I feel so contained and so limited and small, and I have all this karma where I did all this shitty stuff in my past, and it's following back. And it's just like, we can overcome all of this, and we can build our paradise in this three-dimensional reality. And then we can bridge, this world with heaven. We don't have to think, being incarnate on the earth is us being disconnected from our spiritual nature as a result from original sin, so on and so forth. It's, again, making lemons into lemonade. Well, we're here, so we might as well make the best of it. And when we make the best of it, that will be showing us our real mastery as human beings, I feel. We're sort of bridges between these worlds.
So karma then would suggest that there's an evolution of this individual spirit, right? That there's, we learn, we adjust, we gain awareness. I assume that goes back to the whole. And astrology is obviously into archetypes. Do you see that the ultimate for astrology and for humanity is that the archetypes are evolving, and that rather than the masses being influenced by media, that each archetype is now a separate whole, part of the whole that's able to act on its own within a whole, as opposed to the old paradigm, which is that we do need to be influenced, though the masses need to be influenced by new ideas, just to follow that idea and to follow that idea that's a better idea than the old idea. it just seems like we're in a spot where these two are really clashing, and it's coming down to the crunch where like you say, it is coming down to the crunch of life and death for our survival of our species. Geez, I don't even know what I'm asking there. But,
no, you asked a real potent question, in terms of the archetypes. Are they evolving with us or are they not? And that's funny because I was just talking about this with my fiance this morning. It's a very, astrology is a very, very different perspectives in terms of what the archetypes, what the planets even are, what is our relation to them. My personal understanding is coming from Carl Jung. He coined the term synchronicity, which is that the planets, the archetypes, are not necessarily causing all of this. It's not like we're bound to them.
Right.
In whatever they do. We're just choicelessly getting whipped around by them. Oh, Mercury's going retrograde, so blah, 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 everything's going to fall apart. It is a reflection. And again, I think it goes back to divine dance. The archetypes are going through a divine dance in their own dimension. And that gets reflected synchronistically. We're going through the exact same dance. And I don't know, are we causing the gods or are the gods causing us? I think there might even be this mystery in terms of, I don't know, maybe the gods look to us like, whoa, look at that. They're doing the same things as we move through the heavens, or something like that. And so my personal understanding is that archetypes go through their own stories. Archetypes get, we can see, looking at our own human history, that particular archetypes have gotten smeared and beaten up. And it's fascinating to study how those archetypes, our relationship to them, has affected us. Because obviously when one archetype becomes smeared, such as, the divine feminine is the most obvious. All of these feminine ancient goddesses got turned into demons and succubi and all these sort of things. How has that affected us? There is obviously a direct reflection and connection. Right. So maybe on another plane that story is being played out, and it's also certainly being played out in this one. And that leads to a beautiful point. As we heal ourselves, we are healing these archetypes. There's that symbiotic, synchronistic connection. Once again, as those archetypes are healing themselves, we are healing ourselves.
Do you practice other traditions other than astrology? Do you practice meditation, yoga, or dreaming, lucid dreaming, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Where I find myself right now, to be totally honest, is in a place of not really knowing what to define or call myself. But I've certainly explored a number of the traditions, a number of the philosophies, and a number of the practices. And, in that endeavor, sort of seeing what connects them all. What's the purpose of a spiritual practice? What's the purpose of meditation, the purpose of yoga? Because I do think that irrelevant of what particular spiritual practice or particular tradition is, it is all about fundamentally really connecting with our own souls. And we can say that our soul is in this union or romance with God. And so it's when we connect with our souls, we're connecting with God, we're connecting with all of these figures. And so there's many, many ways to do that type of connection, whether it be yoga or meditation, or I was really into, the mala, japa, mantra repetition. I have a Gemini mind, so I already have a hamster wheel. And that's a great point, too, is that, because we're all unique individual souls, our individual practices and philosophies will once again be unique per each individual. And there's a beauty of that, I feel like a lot of times in the mainstream spirituality, I'm doing a Hindu practice, a Christian practice. When I really got into Hinduism, I really submerged into Hinduism. I deeply resonated with the ancient sort of, primordial connection to the gods, and the Hinduism it is sort of like the Greeks. It's a monotheism, it's a polytheism. Again, reality gets kind of complicated. But where was I going with that? Oh yeah, I was raised Christian. I have deep Christian conditioning, and I saw the same fundamental things being taught in different stories and practices, but I really enjoy the full flavor of everything. I like the different traditions and stories, and it's beautiful to see how different people celebrate what fundamentally is all about love and compassion, and that's the measure of our evolution is compassion, and obviously we live in a world where that's not the standard.
Right.
So, how could we change this world? And, if we could somehow get a grip of the mainstream media, or somehow we could get a good role model on a high enough pedestal to set a new standard, what would that standard be? And it would be compassion. It's like, instead of America being number one, we're the best, nationalism. What if the standard for a nation in terms of how successful that nation was how charitable it was to other nations? It's like we can't even imagine what that would be like. But imagine how different our world would be if it's like, wow, America's number one. Look how much they're helping out all the other countries. I think that's what we're trying to get to. And, it might take some harsh lessons to get there first. Like, oh, this is not working the old way. We've got to change some things. But, I would see that as being, a great standard. And so these spiritual practices is how do we get into a place of feeling great enough, good enough, connected enough to nature, to God, to the natural harmony of life that we can just effortlessly share that love and compassion with other people. Because when you feel good enough, when you feel blissed out enough, you want to share it with everybody.
Yeah. It's like if you have the cure for cancer, who wouldn't want to share that? How can you hold information that would help other people to yourself? I don't think it's within our natures.
Only if you're in a lot of pain and a lot of bitter anxiety yourself, I would say. And that seems to be, a pretty prevalent state here on this planet. Yeah. And so, we're looking for any type of anything that's going to help us, any practice, any healing modality. And I personally like to share them all, distribute them all. And the beauty of being an astrologer role is I can talk with somebody one-on-one and give them those types of recommendations that would be geared towards them on an individual basis. Right. Well, you've had this particular type of trauma, this particular type of therapy will help you.
So was there a particular moment where astrology made sense to you, or abstract propositions? Were you always awake? Did you have a moment where things shifted for you? Was just a natural progression to astrology?
Oh man, I could probably write a novel. It's definitely been an unfolding. I would say that it begins with a large amount of anxiety in my life. What's not right here? Why do I feel so wrong? Why do I feel so bad? Is pretty much what catalyzed my spiritual journey. And I think that's a reality of it. I think that our healing journey is one and the same with the spiritual journey. That's something I say a lot because, again, it brings us into our personal experience. What hurts us is where we're going in order for the spiritual journey to unfold. And so that's how it unfolded for me. And I was not awake at all my entire life. There was a particular point where I started to wake up, and it was really not a pleasant awakening experience for me. It was like, oh my goodness, like, we're a lot further from the ideals that we're sort of thinking about but aren't experiencing yet than maybe we'd like to be. And what's in between us and there is a lot of confronting our own shadow. And so my awakening was like getting catapulted, full, plunging into the shadow. Like, oh my goodness. Again, it took the whole world situation and took it straight back to me. It was like, oh, okay, I've got my own bag of stuff that I've got to start to unravel and look at. And that's what really sparked my spiritual journey. In fact, it catapulted it so intensely that at first I was, oh my goodness, I've got to become enlightened and then enlighten everybody and save the world because we're on the brink of disaster. And it's like that sort of putting myself in the shoes of the hero who has to carry this burden of saving the world on my shoulders was, it still is a huge part of who I am, but I've been sort of unwinding that through my own experience. Okay, where is that coming from in me? Right. How is that a part of my own healing journey?
Right. Because there's a bit of desperation in that too, isn't there?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's definitely a lot of desperation. What I learned really fast is it turns people off, and then it sends the opposite of what I was trying to do.
Right. It's another
It's like, oh my
contractive.
gosh, I gotta help you, go away, you know. And so again, the gift of astrology is it's helped me to approach people. Like, oh, okay, here's this type of person. This is how I can approach them in a way that will make them feel comfortable.
Right.
And that's a key word, comfort. Because again, what we have not been taught how to do by our world is take care of ourselves emotionally. It's all about outer safety. We don't have emotional security, which is why we don't process our feelings, which is why we don't get deeper with our own healing journey. So the vast majority of us are, wounded souls that don't know they're wounded and are just sort of flailing around. And so, what drove me to astrology was, wow, I'm this flailing around person. I need help, and I'm going to start to look for the solutions to help myself. It was sort of selfish, I guess. It's just like, help me. How is this going to help me? And that's what brought me into astrology, and I just started reading everybody's charts, and it just took off really fast from there. Because that's when I realized, oh my goodness, this is reality. This is nature. This is not a man-made conceptual idea. This is not a religion. There is no founder. This is only observing nature and our experience and putting the two together.
Right. And having that basic understanding that everything is intertwined in something profound.
Yeah. We're connected to nature. How about that? When the moon is doing its thing over there, we're doing our thing. We feel it. And then the moon is, over here, we feel it. And, I think it takes a level of sensitivity to tune into nature that way. We have to get out of computer land, out of the cities, and develop that sensitivity, first of all, for us to appreciate that interconnectivity. But once that was established for me, I was given a map. That's what astrology gives, is a map. It's a map that can be, you are here in today. It can be a map of you are here in a 10,000-year cycle. And what that did was bring a huge amount of relief that's just like, okay, this is why I have felt and experienced everything that I've felt and experienced thus far in life. I'm not just crazy, is what astrology verified to me.
Right.
Yeah. Despite what people may think about the astrologer, it's actually really quite straightforward and scientific.
Right.
And you can put your own confirmation bias to the test with astrology.
Right.
I don't see that being done too often or shared around, but you can certainly do it.
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest things, and more enlightening things for me when I was growing up, trying to deal with my difficulty in understanding what's going on in this world, was reading Liz Green's Saturn, A New Look at an Old Devil. And it explained, I have Saturn exactly conjunct my moon in the 4th house, so it explained a lot. And you can't help but read that and see that there has to be something there. And I think I was like 14 or 15. Someone gave me the book, and you can't see that and see not that there's something there. And that opened up a whole new understanding of what's coming at me. You know what I mean? And what's here? What's happening. So I relate very much to the whole Saturn and astrology being like you say, a map that kind of just points the finger back at you in some detail. That's very beneficial.
And I really, I'm really, really fond of that idea of Saturn. We're changing the old devil. That's something I'm very called to be a part of that movement, because this is how we come out of hell.
Yeah. Is
to understand that there are no external enemies that are just holding it down. Like in the olden days, you would look at Saturn and that's where you're going to get screwed. And there's still so many astrologers that read that way. Like, I hear horror stories about what other astrologers tell people. It's just like, wow, we really need to decondition this notion of there being this sense of being cursed or it all being determined, or you're just going to have a screwed up life because of your Saturn, because of your Pluto, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, obviously, again, what is the mastery? Saturn is a master's planet. You've got to conjunct your moon. This is emotional mastery that you're talking about, with the moon being there. And so, Saturn is that hurdle, but it's what initiates us into that level of mastery. And if we can see our whole life on this planet, because we're entering some very Saturn years, if we haven't already gotten that sense, where, it can be wintertime. Wintertime is, this is how we show how strong we are as a species, that we can survive, that we can come out on the other end. And on the other end, there'll be many flowers, there'll be many fruits that we'll get to enjoy. And there's a beauty in that cycle even. Like, there's nothing wrong with winter, Right. It's not punishment. It's not punishment that the sun is revolving, the Earth's revolving around the sun, so on and so forth.
Right. Well, that's one thing I've been really pushing in my project here with all my interviews. Again, it always leads to conflict after the first question. And I think that oftentimes I'll talk with people and they'll say, no, we don't need conflict in our lives. And yet they'll go on to say that they learned so much. They learned by the conflict. Conflict is what steered them to becoming self-aware. So I think that, like you were saying about Saturn, that people need to become more aware that conflict is just the friction that promotes awareness. And the awareness after that, you just want to you want that friction to be more of a feeling of expansion as opposed to contraction. But it's important to have that. Sir, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're asking everybody that question, because I don't think conflict should be a bad word.
Right.
Yeah? Conflict doesn't mean war. We don't have to declare war on each other.
Right.
Conflict can just be, I'm a person and you're a different person.
Right.
And we're acknowledging that we're different people. That itself is conflict, Right. But that is a creative conflict that can lead to a great discussion, that can lead to realizations being made, and then two people can leave being better people as a result of conflict without there being any hurt feelings or anything like that.
Right. Right. And it seems we're all there anyways. We all have the ideal of that what it should be like, or what it could be like, but we're not there. So it's like, I think too many people project that as being where we should be as opposed to where we are, and then getting there.
Yeah, and then think about how that comes full circle back to us berating ourselves.
Right.
Oh, I'm not perfect yet, so there's something wrong with me, shame on me, and then we make more hell in our world than is necessary.
Right.
That's a beautiful point. It's like, we're not perfect. What is the grace of being imperfect is we always have the opportunity to learn and grow.
Right.
We don't give enough credit to how much grace and love is in the reality that is not perfect.
Right.
That means it can always get better. Think about how blissful that reality is. You live in a reality that can always and eternally get even better.
Right.
Like, you just threw a great party, well, just wait till the next one. That is awesome.
Right.
And that means that it's not the perfect party,
Right. Right. And I don't think we're just,
the next.
And as a being, I don't think we're just looking for bliss. We're also explorers and adventurers. And I think it's a combination of those forces that really make us alive.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, what's the opposite of I'm doing something wrong? Oh, I'm doing something wrong. It came down to a right or wrong, pass or fail, black or white type reality. The opposite is, no, it's not about a pass or fail. It's about a journey of exploration. If you're on a journey of exploration, there is no pass or fail, right or wrong. We are pioneers, we're explorers, we're experimenters. And it is pioneers and experimenters who are the souls, willing to take the most risks, willing to make the most mistakes in order to have that one genius discovery that can change the whole reality on its head. Right. So if we're just playing it safe and got to be good and got to be perfect, I call that goody-goodiness. That actually is blocking off our soul's yearning to do its thing, to live its life fully. And we get, plastic gold stars and pats on the back for doing, the ordained good path. And really all it turns into is this recycled pattern of us blaming and shaming ourselves for not being perfect yet.
Right. Well, thank you. I knew you were going to be an eloquent fellow to talk with, and it's been very fun to...
Well, thank you. I'm gonna turn that around and say, you hold a really great space. So thanks for holding the space for this to happen.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad you felt that way. Did you ever really ever read Carlos Castaneda? Were you ever into that?
Yeah, I read his first and maybe partway into the second book. Yeah.
And that was it.
And
it never drew you further in.
Never drew me further in, no. I mean, to be totally honest, I have this stereotypical Gemini trait where I read 10 pages out of every book. I've got lots of books, and I've read 10 pages of each one. Yeah, so Carlos Castaneda, it's almost like I'm like a connoisseur of different flavors, you know.
Right.
Castaneda is very particular flavors, so I got a taste of it and said, okay, now I know.
So is that your sun sign? Is that your sun sign, Gemini?
Sorry?
Is your sun sign Gemini?
Yes, yeah.
So,
Sun, Mercury in Gemini. Mm-hmm.
So, I was going to bring up that, there's different astrologers with like evolutionary astrologers and esoteric astrologers put different focus on different aspects of the chart. For you, what is the focus for you? Is the sun sign really the center of the chart as you see it?
No. I do follow Jeffrey Wolf Green's evolutionary astrology. And his particular flavor, we could say, of astrology is mostly Pluto-centric. And the reason that is because Pluto represents the unconsciousness or the soul. The unconsciousness can maybe contain all of our past lives is the idea here. And so by making our unconscious patterns and qualities and behaviors conscious, this is how we become self-aware. And not only that, this is how we regain control, creative control over our lives. Because if we're not conscious of a particular pattern or whatever, it controls us. And we just go through the same loops again and again and again, or we put the blinders on and we say, this is all there is, this is all there is. And when we make ourselves aware of these deep, unconscious underlying dynamics, oh, okay, this is why I fundamentally see this way. And this is how I can expand into my soul's potential, is what evolutionary astrology is about. And so, in Jeffrey Green's system, you first look at Pluto by the sign in the house, and then you look at the south node of the moon. And even the planetary ruler of the sign of the south node is going to tell you where you've had so many experiences in past lives, if you believe in that. And I always ask my clients if they do or don't believe in reincarnation, and then format the reading to be palatable to you. If you don't believe in past lives, these are still early childhood experiences that condition you. And so my understanding is that we sort of, if you believe in past lives, we begin where we last left off. So these stories, these conditions sort of replay in our early childhood. And then we have the opportunity to grow into a potential that is, again, it's coming from our soul's desires. That's what evolutionary astrology says. It's about finding out why you are here. Oftentimes clients ask, why do I have this redundant experience? Well, evolutionary astrology is not just what. It's not, oh, this is going to happen to you on this day, and you're a Capricorn, so, you really like to work, It's why. Why are you this way? What's the purpose? What's the function? What are you growing into? What do you want to learn? And so, it becomes more complicated than just, oh, this is your sun sign, this is who you are. Right. The chart reveals this whole journey. Again, it's a healing journey, it's a spiritual journey, and it's a journey of growth and exploration. And how can we align with our personal soul's journey is what it's really about. That way we're not fighting against the grain. It's easy to fight against the grain in today's world and society where we have these set measures. Oh, this is what it means to be successful. And it is, it's particularly biased towards the physical outward nature. So if you're really Cancer or emotional, you get conditioned to believe that your nature is wrong. Right. And then that generates, why do I feel this way? Why do I have these recreated experiences? Well, it might be because you either, maybe you're not aligned with your soul's journey, or, other people came into your life or prevented you earlier, or you got these conditions that made you feel like you can't be in your full power, or you feel guilty about expressing your intelligence. Astrology is supposed to be healing, Ideally, I hope that my clients leave a reading and feel, fresh and renewed and have an exuberance and an energy to them because they feel more aligned with who they are authentically. And when we align with our soul's journey, things get easier. The universe sort of conspires for us when we align with our soul's journey because it's conspiring for us by slamming us when we don't. Right. What astrology has done for me is taken the good and bad out of reality. Right. There is no good or bad in reality. Right. That's not how it is. Right. It's just us trying to be ourselves and be in harmony, and because that's how life is. And when we're not in harmony, then things are going to look messy because, well, we've lost that that natural way of being. Children come into the world, they're very heaven-like, very joyful, because they don't have all the conditioning and the things put on their backs, so on and so forth. They just are their nature. And so in many respects, we're trying to come full circle back into that youthful, exuberant, spontaneous, expressive state, but also being consciously aware of who we are and how we can use it, so on and so forth.
Alignment, eh? The last question that I asked is, if you could give a public service message to humanity, if you could say something to people, what would you say?
Oh, geez, pressure's on. Yeah. Public service announcement to humanity.
You know what? Let me just take off my picture here so that remote only. Okay. I don't want to rush you. I mean, you can, take your time.
No, I'm taking it probably too seriously, which is a problem. Honestly, I think it's just like we've all got to chill out. We've all got to slow down. We've got to come back inside ourselves, like we've been saying this entire time. And that means we have to give permission to ourselves to come into our feelings, to come into our senses, to come into our bodies, and really listen to what does our own inner child want? What is that inner child asking us? I think that the healing of humanity is the same as healing our soul's innocence, is the same as healing the inner child. I do not believe in bad guys out there. I only believe there are wounded babies. And if we want to get to the core of the issues of what's wrong with everything in the world, we got to ask that inner child, what's wrong? And we're approaching that inner child from the most nurturing, maternal, compassionate space. We have to be our own mothers holding our own inner children, yeah? And that's what initiates us into being the healers of this day and age. And so again, it's not about blaming, it's not about scapegoating. Oh, they screwed up everything. Oh, this person is responsible. It's seeing this wounded child. What wounded this child? How can we get to the core of this issue? And also forgiveness. Forgiveness. How are we going to forgive our own wounded inner child that reacts, that complains, that puts up defense mechanisms and coping mechanisms, is going to get to the very heart of the matter of how we can save this world from the potential, dangers and people thwarting it. Because I think it really does get back to the same fundamental things. And maybe if we could just come back to the same very simple things that we need. We want to feel held. We want to feel included. We want to feel safe. Maybe if we felt safer where we are already today, we wouldn't feel so scared and frigid and defensive that we would feel the need to drop bombs on somebody else. Maybe we wouldn't see them as something scary or malicious or going to attack us if we knew that they are just another set of wounded children and we can all sort of encourage one another. Hey, let's just respect one another as being children. There is no race to prove who is the most advanced and successful, so on and so forth. We're all a family. And in order to feel that sense of family, which is probably the most lacking and the most medicinal thing that we could possibly give ourselves in the world, is the sense of family, the sense of being held, an emotional safe space, which means that maybe you don't have to go out and try to save the world while you have while your stomach is empty. Maybe you shouldn't be making all of these critical decisions, Mr. President, when you really just want to be held. And have somebody say, it's okay. It's okay. I accept you as you are. I accept you as you are, Mr. President. It's okay. I forgive you. I forgive you for your immature and belligerent reactions, because you're just this scared, wounded child, and that's not your fault. It's not your fault. You are just reflecting our past history back to us. And it's been generations of generations of generations of wounded children becoming angry men, powerful tyrants who rule with an iron fist and say, you know what, if you are anything other than me, you are lazy and stupid, because they're just hurting on the inside. And so again, I think it really comes back to that. Let's just nurture, love ourselves as comforting as we can be. You know, whether you're having a bad day, you're having a temper tantrum, I embrace you as my child. You are welcome to be as you are. I forgive and accept you as you are. That would be something that could really revolutionize this world and set a new standard in terms of what it means to be a highly evolved human being. And I think that in many cases, this is going to be the changing of the guard. And who the old role models are, who the new role models are. It's going to take us proving to ourselves that compassion is actually the most powerful force. And dropping bombs and dictating and all of that is actually inferior compared to how powerful love and compassion actually is. So it's sort of paradoxical, you know. We don't think of the mother nurturing force as being super powerful. Maybe we're a little confused then. I hope that answers the question.
That was great. That was awesome. I don't see how we can top that. That was great. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. It's been such a pleasure connecting with you, Randall. So thanks for setting it up.
Me too. Thank you so much, too. It was great. My eloquence is very intermittent, but you have a very nice flow, and you.
That's okay. That's okay. Everybody has different things that are skills. Again, you know, totally. You hold the space as the interviewer. This is what you do.
That's right.
You know, I've got the Gemini, Sun, Mercury, blah blah blah, and so you know, oftentimes people say that, oh, you're very eloquent, and I say thank you. You know, this is my God-given gift. Yeah, sure. But I also see a lot of people sometimes project their own greatness or intelligence on me, like, oh, because you can speak so eloquently, you must be very intelligent and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, I oftentimes feel very intelligent people who maybe don't speak the same way as me project their own intelligence onto me. And it's your own intelligence. It's your own greatness, you know. And we all have these gifts in different ways. So totally. It's a pleasure to be able to shoot the shit and do the Gemini mind blabble thing.
Totally. I appreciate every archetype. I appreciate everybody's gifts. You know, I always feel like I've had a clear view to them, and I always appreciate them, and I always acknowledge them, because for me it's just a way of acknowledgement. To me is one of the beauties of talk, of speak. So thank you so much.
And I think you're setting the precedent for the new age, and what we're all trying to get to is all the flavors are beautiful. So thank you for doing what you do. It's again it's exemplifying. That we can all listen to each other, and that there are all these different perspectives, and yet there is a truth to everything.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Randall. It's been such a pleasure. Take care.
Take care.